West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. One of my absolute favorite polling groups out there. They are very talented in what they do. Has a new voter opinion survey out. Magellan Strategies, and David Flaherty, the founder, president of Magellan Strategies, is going to join us. This is a big one, making headlines in the Denver Post. Colorado voters curdle on top Democrats, including Governor Polis and U.S. senators amid party slide.
Hey, Jeff.
Only about 30% of the Coloradans looking at Democrats favorably these days.
What do you think it had to take, okay, just for our listeners, what do you think it had to take inside that survey for the headline to include curdled?
I know. I was like,
Yeah.
whoa,
I'm like,
that
whoa.
is a headline.
And from them. Yeah, you're like,
Right.
okay.
Great point.
You're telling me the Post is looking at these numbers and they write the headline that says curdled? Okay, listen to the Jeff and Bill Show. How bad is this? Wait until you find out how bad this is.
And look, there's a lot here. This is a fantastic poll. Guys, you're going to want to stick around because we are very honored to have David Flaherty. He's the best in the business, in my opinion. Now it's time, though, for news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning, Tuesday, 69, partly cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 86 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, the IDF says it carried out an attack against Hamas leadership in Qatar. The members that were killed were responsible for the October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel. It took place in the country's capital of Doha. The U.S. was informed ahead of the attack. The FBI and Transportation Department investigating the fatal stabbing of the Ukrainian refugee Irina Zaruska on the Charlotte light rail, of course, that stabbing that occurred in August. FBI Director Kash Patel and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy signaling the incident can have implications far beyond North Carolina. Duffy suggested federal transportation funding is at risk for cities that don't work to curb violence on public transit. On CNN, Abby Phillip, sympathy for the murderer?
Want to be there.
Yeah, and it's
about
difficult
forcing them to be there.
When you are mentally ill, you have a hard time knowing that you are mentally ill. But also, I mean, people like Charlie Kirk, they've been looking for opportunities to make this some sort of like reciprocal George Floyd situation. And that's the part that I think he's almost giving away the game. And it's sad to see a lot of people going along with it.
Yeah, that's the sad part. Unbelievable. The Department of Homeland Security rolling out Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago, targeting criminal illegal aliens. And the great Tom Homan trying to educate Mika Brzezinski this morning. She's a fraud.
Parked outside a Spanish mass is a frightening sight, given what has happened in this country. I also, with respect, sir, thank you for the information that you have shared on this show, but we would appreciate all of the information, all of it, all of the data that you say you have.
I've done this show several times. Every time on your show, I speak with integrity, I speak with honesty, and I speak with facts. The bottom line is, because of all this false narrative, and you using the term disappearing people,
well,
is
that's
disgusting.
What's happened. That happened to the group that was sent to El Salvador.
U.S. citizens get arrested every day. U.S. citizens get arrested by police every day. Are they being disappeared? No, their laws are being enforced. They're being arrested. They're being put in detention because they committed a criminal offense.
Not like what you're doing.
Not even close. We're enforcing the law and arresting people here in violation of law that are public safety threats. That's not disappearing people. That's enforcing the laws of this country and making this country safer.
The polls are open for Virginia's special election to choose a new congressman, a vote that has national implications. Democrat James Walkinshaw is widely expected to defeat Republican Stuart Whitson to succeed late Representative Conley. If Walkinshaw wins, there will be a 219 Republicans to 213 Democrats in the House, and that means Speaker Mike Johnson could then only lose 2 members on any vote. A hearing on unidentified flying objects is set to be held today by a House task force on government transparency. The chair of the task force on the declassification of federal secrets issued a statement saying the American people deserve maximum transparency.
They're bringing all-out blitz. They're expecting the ball to come out quicker than what it did. McCarthy. Pass is caught. Spinning grab by Aaron Jones. And somehow, some way, the Minnesota Vikings are on top.
Vikings come back to beat the Bears last night. Monday Night Football, 27-24. 66 in Golden, 68 in Aurora, 69 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
The weather won't change much day to day. Over the next several days, we're going to see about the same temperatures day and night, and a chance daily that a few showers and thunderstorms will pop up here and there. Highs today through Friday will be in the 80s, nighttime lows 50s with scattered afternoon and evening thunderstorms. Weather is a service of L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call L&L Heating and Air Conditioning at 720-851-1691. Visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Magellan Strategies out with new findings of voter opinion surveys. They've asked questions to over 1,000 Colorado registered voters. Fascinating insights. Dave, I probably spent 2 hours diving through all the stuff yesterday. Incredible insight. People are always asking, where's Colorado? Where is it heading? And these types of polls give us a good temperature. Dave Flaherty, president, founder of Magellan Strategies, joins us now. Thanks so much for taking time to be on the program.
Yes, thank you.
No, happy to be here, Jeff and Bill. And thank you for the comments. You know, we get emails. People are like, who paid for this? What did you do? We do this on our own very often. And it's been, gosh, a good 3 or 4 years since we produced a poll like this. But with so much going on in our country with the new administration as well as here locally, we just, as natural pollsters in curiosity, wanted to do our own survey of measuring where public opinion is on so many things, because so many things are going on. And we just like to put all the data out there, left or right, center, have at it. That's what we measured. And it's a fascinating survey for where the state of Colorado is right now.
I mean, let's talk about, you covered U.S. economy, cost of living. By the way, I have a link on my X account, x.com/Jeff Hunt, to all this. Donald Trump's job approval, the big, beautiful bill, federal department cuts, jobs, layoffs, Trump administration tariff policies, Supreme Court, Republican Party, Democrat Party, the governor, all of that's out there. So what are some of the key takeaways as you look out on the electorate of Colorado? What were some things that really stood out to you?
Well, number one, Jeff, was we were surprised how low or how poor the Democratic Party and the Democrats' job approval in Congress, how high their negatives were. We We've seen them touch close to that back in 2009, during the first 2 years of the Obama administration with Obamacare and the debate back then. But that really struck us because if you know Colorado politics and you're a political observer like we are and follow, along, you can clearly see like, wow, they are really got a big job to do to sort of just become an alternative choice to the Trump administration and what Republicans are coming up with. But please, everybody understand, this survey doesn't say that, a Republican governor's candidate is going to win 60%, 14 months from now. We have a long way to go, but we were just really surprised. And we think the biggest finding is that the Democratic leadership and the Democratic Party really needs to come together and come up with an alternative to what people are seeing from the Trump administration. And that's pretty fascinating to us because that didn't happen in 2018. If you wanted to be elected and serve in office, run as a Democrat in 2018, you were going to win. And these results show that it's a long way from that kind of surge. Can get there. We're a full year out before people really pay attention. But that was the number one finding. And as you mentioned before with the Post, that's not a quote for us on the curdling and so forth. But if you look at the data and the open-ended verbatims about why people have an unfavorable opinion of the Democratic Party, it's all there for you to digest and make your own judgment.
Well, let's talk about the Democrat Party in particular. So you surveyed voters. Here's what they found to be favorable with the Democrat Party: support for middle and working class Americans, protection of rights and social justice, defense of democracy and the Constitution, focus on public service and the common good, and better alternative to the Republican Party. The 68% of voters who have an unfavorable opinion of the Democrat Party described this: poor leadership and policy direction, overreach of government and excessive spending, liberal or progressive agenda seen as extreme, failure to address key issues, and perceived dishonesty or corruption. Dave Flaherty, President Magellan Strategies. I spent an afternoon down at the Bernie rally, 30,000 people, mostly boomers. If you had just airdropped me into it and asked me where I was, I would have told you a Kenny G concert or a John Tesh concert. Everybody had their little chairs, and they all had gray hair, and they were generally pretty peaceful. You had some, Antifa characters there, but 30,000. 30,000. I mean, Dave, you and I have been around politics long enough. Mitt Romney pulled 9,000 into Red Rocks. So this was the biggest rally since Barack Obama in Mile High Stadium. And so I see the frustration with the Democrat Party, and I ask myself, is it because they believe that Democrats aren't doing enough to fight Trump, or do they believe that Democrats have gotten too extreme? What's your take?
Well, here's the thing. If you look at the national figures that we measured, just an image rating on, and that's the question where we ask, do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion? And we included former Vice President Kamala Harris. We included Governor Gavin Newsom of California, and we included, a representative, AOC. I do not want to disrespect her with not pronouncing her name correctly, but I think everybody knows who, she is from New York. And she's the one that had the best image rating. And understand, I'm not talking about among Democrats. I'm talking about that's a measurement. And understand, people, 50% of our survey was unaffiliated voters. It's not Democrats or Republicans. And she had the best one-to-one image rating. What we mean by that is about half the people have an unfavorable opinion of her and the other half have a favorable opinion. And that really tells us that Coloradans, unaffiliated voters that really decide our elections, are giving her a look. They're listening to what she perhaps may have to say. And I would say it's really more about her version of populism, just that I feel that MAGA and Donald Trump has his version of sort of populist politics, and that she doesn't seem to have the baggage, perhaps, of a Bernie Sanders / Elizabeth Warren candidate, both, strong progressive Democrats over the years. But some more moderate Democrats would feel that, those candidates and those elected officials are a little bit too liberal to win like a general election. AOC is refuting that for what she's talking about and what she's saying. So there's something there, obviously, to observe, listen, and learn from, perhaps. not just as a political observer, but from other Democrats. And some other Democrats very well would be looking at her and saying, hey, you know what, I think she's the problem why we're having all of these headaches with our party's image rating, because being too woke. And granted, I would say the Trump administration and the Republican Party and other conservative organizations have really just done a very good job of just hammering home, what is perceived to be woke politics. And it's clearly having a positive effect, or at least by keeping those negatives high among most of their candidates. But AOC is the one that seems the most where I want to hear what she has to say.
And she drew 30,000 to downtown Denver. That's Dave Flaherty, president of Magellan Strategies' newest poll out. Let's talk the independents, the unaffiliates, because I'm going through your poll and I go, well, they just seem to be Democrats without claiming to be Democrats. Did I get that right? Are there elements of the unaffiliated that aren't quite Democrat?
There are, Jeff, but I really believe that inflation, and, in my generation, I'm 56 years old. I never saw inflation really until the last 4 years came along. I do think inflation was something that really was an issue in what younger people are feeling and independents are feeling, where, before inflation really came on the scene and so forth, unaffiliates were more likely to lean towards a Democratic candidate than a Republican candidate. And I won't get into all that because that's a whole other show, Jeff. And so, but they do clearly seem to be concerned about certain issues, or at least I feel that they are. What we really picked up is that unaffiliates are having some pause. Maybe there's a little bit of burnout from our Democrat supermajorities here in the state, but clearly nationally, that, they are in certain issues kind of leaning more towards, look, I'm still not thrilled with these cuts to all these federal, administration and departments. But when it comes to inflation and other things, I kind of still have to give things a look, and I'm willing to listen. And so there's some movement there that is definitely, I think, newsworthy. And a lot of the folks that have written stories about this survey and really gotten into the data see the same thing. And that's interesting for Colorado politics.
Dave Flaherty, president of Magellan Strategies. Dave, good news in this for Republicans. If you were advising Republicans out there, what should they talk about? What advantages should they take out of this? Where are the trends at their back, so to speak? What would you recommend to Republican lawmakers and activists?
100%. And here's one thing that do not overlook this. We asked a question where if you were going to vote for your congressman today, would you vote for a Democrat or a Republican? And it is still the historic D+10, where a Democrat comes in the low 50s and a Republican is still in the low 40s. We also asked in the election for governor, if it was held today, would you vote for the Democratic candidate or the Republican candidate? And that was kind of more of the Trump spread of nearly 12, 14 points. So clearly, this survey is not saying that Republicans are winning over hearts and minds, but what it is saying is probably for the first time in a very long time, whoever is going to be the nominee for, the Republican nominee for governor here in Colorado or in other states, a lot of people do not feel our state's going in the right direction. There's an opportunity to come up and have an agenda that perhaps is a different way of solving the same problems, because also when you ask whether we're in the right direction or wrong track, the wrong track number clearly says, you don't need to be a pollster to know this. Cost of living, inflation, affordable housing. If a conservative or Republican candidate can really come up and address those issues and be more of a problem solver perhaps, and try to say, like, look, we're trying to tackle these things in a different way, but also get where you want to go. We, for the first time in a while, may actually see a candidate for governor do more than 45% of voter support. That's a long way off. People are still very uncomfortable with the Trump administration and a lot of their policies, and that wasn't surprising to us. We've known that for a long time, that Coloradans, especially the registered voters, have trouble seeing what they're seeing with all these dramatic changes, coming from this administration. So, and there's some good news in there, I would say, for Gabe Evans. And on those CD numbers, meaning those congressional district measurements, understand the margin of error on that is about 8%, okay? Like, you got to be honest about that. We interviewed about 150 people in each congressional district of our 8 congressional districts. But it seems like Gabe Evans has a little bit more breathing room, than perhaps he did, 2 years ago. on some things, such as beautiful bills, such as tariffs and things, so there's a little bit of hope. It's not as much of like just take Colorado off the map. It's very, very blue. There's some serious concerns going on under there, and it's an opportunity, but we will see where it goes.
Yeah,
and,
I noticed
measuring the change.
Go
ahead, Jeff. I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. I go, Gabe Evans looks pretty good. Jeff Crank's district? Yeah, that caught me as a little different as well, but I want to turn it over to Bill to ask some questions.
I just want to outline that in that poll, it looked like District 3, 4, and 8 are really, really good for Republicans. The rest of them, there's some issues.
Well, and 5 is Cranks.
Yes.
So you're looking at Colorado Springs. I mean, do you want to talk briefly about that,
Yeah,
Dave?
let's do that. Yeah, because Colorado Springs, just for the numbers,
I'm happy to talk about that.
It's 54.
Bill.
Yeah, 54 oppose and 43 support, and that would be Jeff Crank's District 5. So yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, the Springs is changing over time. Colorado's been changing for the last 15 years. A lot of Republican-leaning counties are becoming a little bit more blue. They're not exactly, blue yet. However, I mean, look at the mayor, down in Colorado Springs. He is not a Republican, and before then, rock-ribbed where, strong Republican support there. But it's changing. It is slowly changing, and it is not perhaps as conservative as it was 10 years ago. However, you have to understand, we do not engineer these surveys where the sample, we may have had a little bit more independent-leaning, Democrat-leaning independents in Jeff's sample down there, Congressman Crank, compared to, we had a few more conservatives in CD8. That will happen. There's always going to be some variance. So as a statistician and just understanding survey research, there may be a little bit more going on there, but I really do believe that, El Paso County's been changing. Colorado Springs has been changing slowly over time. I still think Jeff is in okay shape and that I don't anticipate him having a dogfight, but I understand, too, that some people are going to be like, CD5 looks a little bit more liberal or a little bit more center than you would expect. So that I just wanted to address that. In all honesty, that's how we go about our work. And, we don't engineer every single respondent. The data lands where it does beyond the statewide demographic, guardrails that we put up as we make sure that the sample is representative of the registration in Colorado by party, affiliation, age, etc.
That voice is David Flaherty. He is the president of Magellan Strategies. They just released a new poll about how voters are feeling about the conditions in Colorado and kind of a look to larger things happening in the midterms. Yeah, that's how Jeff and Bill roll. We have the president of Magellan Strategies here. Hopefully, sir, this is the first of many conversations with you. I do appreciate your time. One of the things in here that I thought was very interesting, we touched on it earlier, it was the 68% unfavorable rating for the Democrats. Oddly, it's a mirror image for the Republicans. It's a 68% unfavorability rating, and while the language is slightly different, many of the things that groups are unhappy with are somewhat consistent between both parties, and the reason they support them also somewhat consistent. They just come to different conclusions about who's going to protect my rights, who's going to make it economically viable for my business or my family, things like that. What can we draw from this survey, David Flaherty, president of Magellan Strategies, when both the Republicans and the Democrats got a 68% unapproval rating?
Bill, you're getting me excited because that's why we put this data out, and I really appreciate you putting those dots together. And there's one thing. We did ask a question in there, would you vote for a third-party candidate? And, it was 60%, 65%. However, we didn't want this poll that's a whole nother survey to talk about. Is this finally a time where we could have a viable third party to actually, get real levels of support? I'm talking about more than 30%. Clearly, voters are not happy where either party perhaps is in addressing these problems. And a lot of these problems are big. Like, you can't just turn around inflation overnight. You cannot just turn around affordable housing and the cost of living overnight, and I feel that there's a lot of pressure there, especially, too, among those younger voters on 18 to 34, where they have problems buying homes. They have problems getting their jobs off and running. They have problems, you know what I mean? I feel like they have a lot more challenges than an older Colorado voter, perhaps such as myself, middle-aged or older. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of what I've seen from like No Labels or some other these independent, kind of parties and so forth, where now's the time we're going to be the tiebreaker. We've seen that in the past, and it's just not the way to go about perhaps going there. But there is also a path there. You would assume the environment could not be any better for perhaps somebody to come through and say, hey, we have some different ideas, but you've got to be honest about where you stand on certain issues. So, and it's also so unfortunate, you know what I mean, in the sense of, can our political system meet the needs and the desires of our voters and our electorate? And right now, I would have to say right now, they're frustrated with both major political party options, but yet that's the environment, we all live in. And we're just going to keep watching and see and participate in our elections as we always do and see where it goes.
Yeah, that's David Flaherty, president of Magellan Strategies. Yeah, I was very fascinated on that 60% could be persuaded to vote for a third-party candidate. And we do see some breaks with the younger kids. Got a question for you on that idea of a third-party candidate. Do you think it helps because that third-party candidate is unnamed? And what I mean by that is, and hopefully you'll get the reference, the Brewster's Millions example from the movie, where Richard Pryor has to spend a bunch of money. He runs for office, but wants everybody to vote for none of the above. Is this 60% possibly a Brewster's Millions type of situation where we just want none of the above?
Well, if you've been around and for a long time, I don't know if you remember the former governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura. He's a former wrestler.
I am a pro wrestling fanatic. I can tell you what he wore and what his tagline is. Absolutely. Absolutely, my man.
Well, here's the thing, Bill. That's one of the rare examples where, yes, somebody with a different idea and said, hey, I'm that caught fire and was actually able to win the election and was governor for one term in the state of Minnesota. You're absolutely right. It's a generic measurement, but once you put in the candidate and you learn about the characteristics and the priorities of the candidate and what they really want to fight for and where they really stand, because I don't know if you remember years ago, gosh, maybe it was in 2012 where, we used to put out a lot of research on unaffiliated women, and a independent group tried to run 5 independent candidates in 5 Senate races, and they all bombed spectacularly. Because they were like, well, we're not going to tell you how we stand on things. We're going to be the tiebreaker. That does not work. People you're going to need to win. You're going to need win over some Democrats and Republicans and presumably a large plurality or majority of unaffiliates. And that doesn't work. You need to come out and say where you stand on tariffs, on, right to life, on inflation, on a lot of things. And, I feel that until candidates reveal their true colors and get into that, you're absolutely right. I feel that support level perhaps may be a little bit high because you're always going to have something that's going to turn off a Democrat or Republican if you truly are, what I consider to be an independent or I'm running down the middle. I'm a little conservative here on fiscal, but I'm liberal on social issues. But it's an excellent observation. We'll see, we'll see. But honestly, that's why we've only had really one success story in Jesse Ventura, but the environment looks pretty good for somebody to step in and perhaps provide, as they call it, a third way.
Yeah, I mean, you got to love a governor that can look good wearing a feather boa. That's a unique skill set. Now, David Flaherty, president of Magellan Strategies, we talked about the younger voters, the younger demographic, kind of pushing back and being the most dissatisfied in certain areas economically in this poll. Based on what you've seen and the internal numbers, while they are dissatisfied, do you think they're upset enough to create a change in Colorado's voting structure? And basically, it comes down to the core question. Will they show up on the day we have to vote? Or, as in past generations, they may be angry, but they don't come out and actually click the little box. So we're not as concerned about that younger demographic. Are they potentially a game changer? What do your numbers tell you?
Excellent question, Bill. And, in the 2024 election, 100,000 fewer voters aged 18 to 34 showed up to vote than did in 2020. And at the same time, about 100,000 more seniors, 65 and older, turned out to vote. Why did turnout not show up in 24 as strong as it was in 2020? And what does that tell us about moving forward? I would say that perhaps the first Trump administration, and the Democrats did a good job of really, energizing to vote against something. With the measurement of where the Democratic Party is right now, I would bet that they're probably not going to hit their turnout numbers that they did in 2018. And again, folks, they were nearly 1 out of all 4 votes cast in 2018. That's presidential sort of level turnout. And it showed up in 20, but it has faded away. And I'm not exactly, sure in our data what we see. Do they need a Barack Obama, type of leader to really hit both sides of the coin, where not only are you upset with the incumbent president, presumably President Trump, but you have a candidate that really gets you excited about their campaign and where it's going? Great observation. We have to see if that kind of candidate is going to motivate those younger voters, where yep, I'm 100% behind this candidate that has Obama-style, generational star talent. And I don't know if that's going to happen. And that's why I feel like one of the biggest questions in Colorado politics is, are we going to have a repeat of 2018 where, like I mentioned, hey, any Democrat that ran pretty much won. It was a very big, first, midterm election, which is historic, where the incumbent president in his first term or her first term does not do well. But because of the lackluster energy that we saw in 2020 and what we see out of these numbers now and what rough shape the Democrat brand is in, I'm not sure if that's going to happen.
That voice is David Flaherty. He's the president of Magellan Strategies. Yes, we have the president of Magellan Strategies on with Jeff and Bill. This is crazy. And again, just released a brand new survey looking at the political forecast here in Colorado. Some of you statewide Democrats, Hickenlooper, Bennett, you guys are underwater. Jeff Crank has some issues, but Gabe Evans looked like he's sitting pretty right now. I want to dive into, David Flaherty, a little bit more of the approval, unapproval ratings that are breaking down based on party affiliation. There were 74% of your respondents thought that Congress was too extreme if they were a Democrat. That's only about a 10, 11-point swing if you're a Republican. 63% of self-identified Republicans were unsatisfied with Congress and the idea of things getting too extreme. Do you think a majority of those that are serving in government are either too extreme or not with Democrats? And this is, I think, is interesting, because the question was asked, do you think a majority of the Republicans who serve in the federal government are too extreme? And then the question was asked, do you think the majority of Democrats who serve in the federal government are too extreme? And this was asked of people that already have self-identified. So they're asking the Democrats about Democrats, Republicans about Republicans. Long way around the barn. But the interesting thing that I pulled from that was 50% of the Democrats thought they were being too extreme, but 56% of Republicans thought their own people in federal government were being too extreme. David Flaherty, president of Magellan Strategies. What in the hell is going on? What do we do with that number? That's just confusing to me.
Well, Bill, for now, the Democratic Party has welcomed to what the Republican Party went through with the Tea Party and has still lived with really for the last 15 years. Excellent observation. And that's, again, part of the reason why that 74% disapproval and just the extreme being too high among the federal Democrats being, a worse measurement than the Republicans. Because in all honesty, really, since 2016-ish, you're typically 6 out of 10 Republicans, your average Colorado voter, when you do a measurement, is going to be uncomfortable with perhaps, MAGA and Republicans. That is what it is. But you excellent observation there. And when you look inside the numbers, half of Democrats think their own party is too extreme. Those are older, moderate, down the middle of the road Democrats, perhaps, that do feel comfortable with, I'm not exactly going to say DEI or parts of that or what, I would consider that being older Democrats that, the incessant drumbeat from the Trump administration about we're against woke politics and woke things, whether it's crime on our streets, whether it's all these things, because these Democrats have, started all of this and it's their fault. And there is no response. And I really attribute that high level against the Democrats from that you can show that that's some success that the administration and the Republican organizations are having, because there's just been a complete lack of response from the Democrats. There is nobody fighting back on that. They really seem to be caught off on the wrong foot, if you will, with that. And they don't have a good answer, I feel. And that's what I believe is really why half the Democrats aren't happy with what's going on, half the with their own party, half the Republicans aren't happy with what's going on with their own party, and that very well could be immigration. It could be, alligator, et cetera, regarding ICE detentions. It could be tariffs, like the administration's really pushing a lot of boundaries, and there are perhaps old, more moderate Republicans that are like, I don't like where we're going with this economy. I don't think this is going to end up in a good place. But there's so much to measure there. And I know, like you said, that's a roundabout answer. But I think just to sum it up really quickly, the Democrats in Washington have not done a good job pushing back on how they're being completely defined by the Trump administration. And at the same time, in that Republican measurement, that's just probably a George W. Bush type of Republican that feels that, President Trump's pushing too many boundaries and going too far on just such an unbelievable overhaul in so many areas of our government and our way of life.
That's David Flaherty with Magellan Strategies. Magellan Strategies provides public opinion polling and survey research for governments, school districts, special districts, public policy groups. If you go to their website, MagellanStrategies.com, you'll see all the different clients that they serve. It's cities, counties, schools all across Colorado. They are the very best, in my opinion. And it's been an honor to have you on the show with us today, David Flaherty. Thank you for your time, sir.
This has been a treat. Thank you so much for all the time.
No, absolutely, Jeff and Bill. I appreciate it. You all have a wonderful day, and talk to you soon.
That's great. Thank you. David Flaherty, Magellan Strategies, MagellanStrategies.com. All right, let's talk Dan Caplis with Dan Caplis Law. Dan suggests you should choose a lawyer who shares your values because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everyone involved in the case. Dan Caplis is the son of a police officer. He's a former seminarian who's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law, the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call, 303-770-5551. 303-770-5551 or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S Law.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Great conversation with Dave Flaherty over at Magellan Strategies. So, Bill, I got to tell you the story. When I was first introduced to Dave, I just moved back to Colorado, and he was pretty well known in conservative circles about his polling. I think he worked for a Republican Party at one point, but just honest, because here's what I had run into. Okay, I was in a strategy meeting one time with the Santorum Senate race in 2006, and the pollster was like, well, Rick, it's going to be tough, but I think you could pull it out. He lost by 16 points.
Oh.
Same pollster gets picked up by Romney, okay?
Yeah.
So this is rattling around in the back of my head. This is now 2012, 6 years later, and I'm on a conference call from Boston, where the headquarters of the Romney operation are. I was the state coalitions director here in Colorado. And they're like, we locked it up. We're going to win. We are going to win this election.
Wow.
And so I go into meetings and I'm like, yeah, Boston's telling us we're going to win. And Dave comes over and he's like in this meeting, he goes, Jeff, you guys are going to lose by 6.
Ooh, how did he know?
You're not going to win this thing. Okay. And I'm like, whatever, dude. All right. Senior pollsters on a presidential campaign. Dude, they called the race before Colorado's polls even closed.
Yeah, they did. That was
a
quick one. Yeah.
And guess how much we lost by in Colorado?
6?
6.
No.
Yeah.
How in the wide world of sports did
because
he
knows. He knows the people he's talking to. And so this is an important thing from somebody who's been a part of a lot of campaigns to everybody out there that's running. If you ever hire a pollster, don't hire somebody to be your friend. You want somebody who's going to give you bad news.
That's true. That's true.
Right? And Dave has said for a long time, we've had a demographic crisis, if you're a Republican in Colorado, that you're just not going to be able to overcome in this state. You've had so many progressives move to this state. The electorate has become so progressive that you can try to go out there with the right message. You could spend a lot of money, but there's just so many of them. And that's kind of the truth. And you see that with the unaffiliates, where I just go, these are just Democrats who don't want to say they're Democrats. But anyways, I appreciate Dave. I trust Dave because Dave will give me bad news. And that's what you want in your pollster.
Yeah, that is absolutely what you want.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk advanced hair restoration. You're losing your hair. You need a simple solution that works. You want the best modern technology with top-rated physicians, something that's guaranteed to work. Guys, you need Dr. Tanya Pauls and her team at Advanced Hair. They've completely redefined hair restoration, from the experience itself to their unmatched results. You got a receding hairline, bald spot, or thinning hair. Address them all with Advanced Hair's simple one-day treatment in a calm, relaxed environment with the most experienced professionals. Advanced Hair has performed tens of thousands of these breakthrough treatments, and get this, your own natural hair begins to regrow the very next day. No one in Denver can offer anything like the Advanced FUE found at Advanced Hair, and I highly recommend their team. It starts with your free consultation. Call 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you also get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Refine your hairline with the team that's redefined hair restoration. 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. AdvancedHair.com. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Yes, lots of text messages correcting me on this. You just want someone to give you the news, not just the bad news. But I've just heard so many pollsters just lie to their clients.
And part of it is that AI idea, because we've seen the idea that AI right now is changing how people, and we've even gotten people into like AI psychosis because it reinforces your delusions, because AI wants you to continue using that AI, and the pollster wants you to use them again. So by telling you, telling you your baby's
they don't want to get
ugly,
fired in the middle of a contract.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah, and especially if and think about
it's
it.
It's like a doctor that's being like, everything's healthy. Ignore the lump.
And how hard is it when you're sitting there going, no, I think we can win, etc. But this group says we're not. Don't you go out and you ask a different group? Isn't that the first thing you want to do as a human?
Oh, boy. The poll numbers. Colorado's an enigma.
Yeah, we are. It's weird.
And it all meets here on the Jeff and Bill Show. If you missed any of it, go to 710knus.com to download the podcast. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
Oh, and today's a great example of us being an enigma. This is 710 KNUS.